Imagine suddenly waking up in medieval Europe. Your first instinct would probably be to look around and ask, where am I? Well, your room would likely look something like this. Nothing luxurious. Just a bit of warm water, a basic bed, and that's it. Then you'd think, let me wash my face. Is there a bathroom? Not really. Hygiene wasn't exactly a top priority back then, and the water you'd wash with, probably murky and cold, something like this. Next, you might hope for a nice breakfast, but nope, not quite. Breakfast often meant a piece of stale bread, maybe with some dried herbs. In many places, it was just beer and bread, because beer was actually safer to drink than the water. Your first real task of the day? Cleaning up after your animals. But that mess wasn't all bad, it was a blessing, really. Perfect fertilizer for your precious fields. So you head out to the fields. You're either digging into frozen, rock-hard soil in winter, or sweating under the blazing sun for 8 to 10 hours a day in summer. If you're lucky, the land is your own, but most likely, you're working for the king. You're not one of the nobles. No, you're one of them, the peasants. The ones who pay taxes, obey orders, ask no questions. You're something close to a servant, almost like a living tool. Lunchtime? If you're lucky, it's a kind of mush. And if it has potatoes in it, congratulations, it's a good day. If not, well, this sad-looking mess is what you get. And don't expect any clean drinking water. Forget about hygiene. The water was so filthy, even children drank beer at breakfast. Why? Because only beer was safe. The brewing process, a form of fermentation, actually killed bacteria. Even monasteries avoided water. They brewed beer instead, and barrels of it were donated or sold to monks and churches. Now, ask yourself honestly, could you survive these conditions? Would you dare drink this water? Without modern medicine, would your immune system even make it past childhood? Oh, and if you're imagining big juicy roasts, grilling lamb until it's golden and crispy. Forget it, that was a rare luxury. This is more like the kind of meat you would get. Most of the time it was just fish. And even then, only if you lived in a port city. Otherwise your fish traveled for days in a cart, stale, smelly, and barely edible by the time it reached you. Still craving red meat? Well, here's your red meat of the day. Back then, pork was the staple, but it was sold in conditions that were far from hygienic. Speaking of hygiene, let's talk about toilets. People used chamber pots, bowls, or buckets to relieve themselves. And where did the waste go? Right out the window? Onto the street? Yes, you heard that right. Human waste, dumped straight into the streets. Even castles, grand royal castles, had their version of this. They had small wooden closet-like structures that stuck out from the walls. Toilets emptied directly outside. In the morning, special workers called gong farmers collected all that waste. They hauled it off to the fields and turned it into fertilizer. Whether you were a peasant or a noble, your toilet eventually ended up in the soil, helping grow next season's crops. Oh, and toilet paper? Didn't exist. People usually used sticks, yes, sticks, to clean themselves. There was no pharmacy on the corner to grab some painkillers. Even doctors didn't really know what they were doing. Even most doctors were uneducated, and many were affiliated with the church. During the plague, which killed around 40 million people, many doctors were completely helpless. In fact, the massive loss of faith in traditional medicine started right there. Some doctors gave you strange potions to drink, which could kill you. Others stuck leeches on your skin, hoping to treatment, which again could also kill you. Medicine wasn't even a proper profession yet. If someone had sharp tools and some confidence, they might just try to treat you. If you were lucky, you didn't die because of the doctor. And if you think death was something rare and avoidable, think again. It wasn't hard to die in your sleep. From something as small as a rat bite, that's right, a single infected rat could bite you, and a few days later, you'd be dead. 1 in every 4 newborns didn't even make it to their first birthday, and most of the rest died before age 6. Life expectancy was around 31 or 32. So if you were 30, you'd probably already fought in a war and had a good chance of being either dead or permanently crippled. People who romanticize the Middle Ages usually have no idea what life was like for the common folk. Ordinary people were truly suffering. As you may know, in medieval Europe, the social structure was defined by a rigid and unforgiving feudal system. At the very top stood kings, nobles, and powerful lords, while the vast majority lived under relentless exploitation. If you weren't born into wealth or nobility, surviving was not a given. It was a daily battle. Bound to a feudal lord, your labor was not your own. The land you lived on, it belonged to him. Leaving the village, forbidden. Even as a humble farmer, most of your harvest went straight to taxes. When war came, your body was expected to fight and perhaps die for someone else's cause. You had no rights, no voice, no defense. The justice system served only the elite. If a noble disliked you, that alone could lead to punishment. No trial, no appeal, social mobility, a fantasy. From the moment you were born, your fate was sealed. No education, no choices, no dreams, just endless labor, aging, and death in the shadow of a lord who would never know your name. This was the reality for millions. A system built not to serve you, but to control you. In the brutal logic of feudal Europe, a human life mattered only as long as it was useful. If you were lucky enough to be part of a proper army, great. But if your village was attacked by a roaming band of raiders, well, things probably wouldn't end well. You could get shot by an arrow while relieving yourself in the woods just because someone wanted the clothes off your back. And if you still think life in the Middle Ages wasn't so bad, wait until you hear about the taxes. If you somehow managed to survive, the state, or rather the Lord, would tax you relentlessly. And the church? The church was even worse. Unimaginably rich, it profited from faith and religion. They sold salvation. Yes, they sold land in heaven for money. Their game was creating fake taxes, selling indulgences, and manipulating people in the name of faith. And if you dared to question the church, you'd be tried. And trust me, it wouldn't be a fair trial. Bribery was rampant. A noble could never be wrong in the eyes of the court, no matter what. Justice belonged to whoever was rich enough to buy it. If you were accused of a crime, you could be tortured until you confessed. Even if you didn't do it, you could be jailed or even executed in someone else's place. Tens of thousands of people were marched through the streets and publicly executed for crimes they didn't commit. Tens of thousands of women were thrown into rivers, accused of being witches. If they floated, they were declared guilty. If they sank and drowned, they were considered innocent. But by then, they were already dead. And if somehow they survived, they were burned at the stake. Thousands of women were executed this way simply for being labeled witches. Some say this was even used to balance the population while the men were off at war. And if you're thinking, maybe I'd be a king in the Middle Ages, well, the odds of that were very slim. Noble knights were extremely rare. Only around 5% of soldiers could even afford proper armor. The average soldier. They didn't ride majestic war horses, the tanks of the time. They didn't wear shining armor. Most were peasants fighting with spears. These spearmen would march for days on foot, and many died before they even reached the battlefield. One arrow, one rock, that's all it took. Death did not come only in war. Another danger was shelter. In the Middle Ages, life for an ordinary person was not only a struggle with poverty, hard labor, and class oppression, it was also a fight against the cruelty of nature. Most of the people living in the villages of that era struggled to meet even their most basic housing needs. Houses were typically made of wood, adobe, or mud mixed with straw. These materials were cheap and easy to find, but also dangerous, easily flammable, blown away by wind and melted by rain. A single spark could cause a fire capable of destroying an entire village. These homes had almost no insulation. The roofs leaked, the walls let in the wind and cold. In the winter months, keeping warm inside was nearly impossible. The wood burned in small stone hearths was often insufficient. More often than not, the smoke would fill the house and make the people inside sick. Many people, especially children and the elderly, died from the cold. Freezing to death was nearly as likely as dying in battle. Summer brought a different hardship, but not an easier one. Mud houses cracked under the heat. Roof thatch dried out and crumbled. After the drought came fires. After the fires came hunger. Nature didn't move in harmony. It often acted in chaotic and destructive ways. During disasters, asking for help was not even an option. There was no support from the state, no aid from the lords. People relied on themselves. They sought refuge with neighbors or carried stones with their bare hands to rebuild. That solidarity became the only path to survival. But every disaster brought more poverty, more death, and even less hope.